The wind howled across the open plains, carrying dust and grit that stung the skin, but it was nothing compared to the sting in her heart. 16-year-old Emily stood trembling, her wrists rubbed raw against the coarse rope that bound her to an old fence post. Her father's voice still echoed in her ears. The bitterness, the anger, the words that cut deeper than any whip. "You're nothing but trouble," he had spat before leaving. Her in the middle of nowhere. She didn't know if he truly meant to come back, or if this was his final abandonment. But the reality pressed down heavier with every passing second. She was alone, discarded like something worthless. The sun bore down mercilessly, and tears streaked through the dirt on her cheeks. Her throat burned with thirst, her body shivered from fear, but deeper still was the ache of betrayal. Just when her hope had begun to collapse into despair, she heard it, the distant sound of hooves. At first she thought it was her imagination, the desert playing tricks on her mind. But then a dark figure on horseback grew clearer against the horizon. A tall man in a weathered hat and dusty boots slowed his horse as he drew near. His eyes, sharp and searching, took in the sight before him, a young girl tied cruelly to the fence like a prisoner. He didn't ask who she was or why she was there. He simply swung down from his saddle with a determination that needed no words. His knife sliced through the rope with one clean motion, and Emily stumbled forward into his arms, too weak to stand. "Easy now," he murmured, his voice steady and calm. His name was Jack, a rancher who lived miles from town, known by locals as a man who kept mostly to himself, a man burdened with silence. Yet here he was, a stranger who couldn't turn away from someone else's suffering. He lifted her gently onto his horse, his protective presence wrapping around her like a shield. For the first time since her father abandoned her, Emily felt the faint spark of safety. As the rancher guided his horse back toward his land, she clung to the saddle horn, her tears mixing with dust and sweat. She didn't know what awaited her, but she knew one thing. This lonely man had just altered the course of her life forever. And for Jack, who had lived in quiet solitude for years, the decision to untie a frightened girl from a fence would awaken something inside him he thought he had buried long ago, a sense of purpose, and maybe, just maybe, the chance to heal two broken hearts. The ranch house came into view just as the sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky in streaks of crimson and gold. Jack helped Emily down from the horse, steadying her as her legs threatened to give way. The wooden porch creaked under their weight as he guided her inside, where the smell of old wood and leather wrapped around them. Jack wasn't a man of many words, but his actions spoke louder than speeches. He poured her water, offered her bread, and set a blanket around her shoulders. Emily's hands trembled as she ate, every bite reminding her that she was still alive, that someone cared enough to keep her from starving. She didn't tell him everything at first. The pain was too raw, the memory of being abandoned too heavy. But over the next few days, as the quiet ranch became her refuge, words began to spill out. She told him about her father's rage, about the years of feeling unwanted, about the final cruel moment of being left behind. Jack listened, his eyes shadowed by something she couldn't yet name. He never judged, never asked for details she wasn't ready to give. He simply listened, and in his silence she felt seen. Jack himself carried scars of his own, a wife lost long ago, dreams buried with her, and a ranch that had become more of a prison than a home. Yet as he watched Emily slowly regain her strength, something shifted inside him. He found himself waking earlier, tending the horses with more energy, fixing meals he used to eat cold and alone. She brought life back to the lonely halls, laughter that hadn't been heard in years, and Jack realized he needed her presence just as much as she needed his protection. Still, the world outside wasn't safe. There were questions from neighbors, whispers about a rancher harboring a girl who wasn't his kin, and the looming possibility that her father might come back. But Jack's resolve was ironclad. He had pulled her from despair, and he wasn't about to let her slip back into the hands of cruelty. "You're safe here," he told her one evening as the fire crackled in the hearth, his voice carrying the weight of a vow. "I won't let anyone hurt you again." For Emily, those words meant everything. They were the family she never had, the love she had always craved, spoken by a man who was once too broken to speak at all. Together, they were rewriting their stories, the abandoned girl and the lonely rancher, two wounded souls who found healing in each other's company. Their journey was just beginning, but already it had proven one truth, that even in the darkest moments, kindness has the power to change everything. And, dear listener, if this story touched your heart, remember that there are countless stories like Emily's and Jack's waiting to be told. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss them, because sometimes the right story arrives at the right moment, and it can change not just the life of the one who lived it, but yours too.